a team that we have talked a lot about today. Michigan State has been all over the news. So we're going to welcome in our friend Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate. And Stephen, Jonathan Smith gets the job, and then all three scholarship quarterbacks transfer. And I think the consensus is, panic. But how has he handled that situation so far?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Smith at his introductory press conference last week struck the right tone in terms of he was always careful to say he didn't demonize these guys who went in the portal either before he was hired or right after he was officially announced. He said, hey, these guys have been through a lot. When you look at this season, 2023, how things went there, you can understand that. He was very sympathetic and understanding of guys that want to go explore other options. And he said, look, you can come back in our locker room, and by January, whoever's in here, we're going to be ready to move forward with this thing. But, he wasn't pushing the gas pedal. He was giving them space. He said he understood why, people would want to go explore things. Because, look, to be honest, I don't think a lot of guys had a lot of fun this year. And who could blame them with all the circumstances? So it's clear that they're going to be very active on both ends of it. 19 kids went in even before today, before the portal was fully open. 19 kids were either in already, going back to September when Mel Tucker was fired, or stated their intention to get in. And there's a lot of interesting guys in that group we can get into. And then, on the other end, of course, Jonathan Smith and his coaches are going to be mining through that portal to restock the talent at several different positions. And, Aiden Chiles, quarterback, is, of course, the name everyone's talking about watching today.
They are all talking about it, which is a big reason that we have brought you on this show to continue that discussion. Brandon Huffman putting in a crystal ball for Aiden Chiles to follow his head coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State. What are you hearing on that front?
I've heard a little bit, let's say whispers, basically since the Jonathan Smith was hired, that it was a possibility, maybe even a good possibility. But, there's some hurdles and whatnot. I mean, Aiden was not even in the portal. I don't even know right now. He might be right now, but for a while he was not as a non-graduate. So I think there was some hope and some optimism for sure on Michigan State's end that this would be able to get done. And assuming it does cross the finish line and Chiles comes here, I mean, we're talking about the first big recruiting win for Jonathan Smith and his staff here. I'm a big fan of Aiden Chiles. I was one of those guys staying up late here on my Eastern time zone, watching them and how they would script a couple series a game for him. They felt that confident in him as a true freshman, even with DJU playing as well as he was, that they just felt they had to get that guy in the game. And he rewarded the coach's faith. I mean, you watch him play, the poise, the athleticism, the arm he's got, all that as a true freshman. There's no doubt, that people should be excited if he were to land here. This thing you're talking about, starting the Smith era in a fast, big way, potentially.
And that would be a major splash. Obviously, there's a connection between those two, but we have him ranked as the #1 quarterback in the portal right now. So that would be quite the way to start that era. We talked about the quarterback position, but you mentioned, 19 players have hit the portal from Michigan State since Mel Tucker left. Where are some other positions of need for the Spartans?
Sure. Within that 19, we're talking about 6 offensive linemen, 5 of them who had starting experience. That includes, both players who started at right tackle. It was an either-or situation based on health and performance. Starting right guard, the right guard that filled in for him when he was gone. So 5 guys with starting experience, 6 total. One of them being Keyshawn Blackstock, who's now committed to Arkansas. He was the #1 JUCO offensive lineman last offseason, and that was a big recruiting win for the now former Michigan State staff. But it didn't really work out for him here. Got an injury, never really factored into the playing group too often. And he ended up moving out. So offensive line, I think, is an area they have to hit hard as they rebuild this. Luckily, Jonathan Smith's O-line coach, Jim Michalczyk, I hope I'm pronouncing that fairly accurately, has a very good reputation for recruiting and development. This has got to be a developmental program. That's a position. Like I always say, you can't just add water and boom, there you go. You got offensive line. You need development. And then receiver, I would just mention, when quarterback depth is gone, we'll talk about receiver. They lost 3 guys who would definitely be in their playing group next year if they were to return. So that's probably another area where you're looking at them to add some depth, and not only depth, but high-end talent if they can.
Stephen, I want to end with a fun one. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If Aiden Chiles transfers to Michigan State, he is the best Spartan quarterback since...
Oh, man.
Ooh, yeah. It's been a while.
I mean, the default would be Connor Cook in 2015, I guess. Brian Milwaukee, though, in the meantime, had a good year, a couple good years. He got hurt at the end, so maybe, definitely probably since the Workie at least, maybe since Connor Cook, but those are very, very high expectations.
So at least since 2015. It's been a while. I know the Spartan fans are excited to have somebody to root for, so we will keep an eye on that, and I'm sure that you will as well. So be sure to check out Spartan Tailgate for all things Michigan State. Stephen, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's continue the conversation, because when the name Aiden Chiles comes out, we got to bring in Cooper. He is just the captain of the fan club here. It's one thing to make the big splash when you're a new head coach coming in, and I think that this would be a way of doing it. It's another thing to then win football games. So how does Aiden Chiles get them back in bowl game contention?
Well, he gives them a foundational piece, right? I mean, I think bowl game contention, obviously, that's where every Michigan State fan wants to be. Jonathan Smith wants to be there as well. But right now, I mean, you're talking about a program that's going to have to rebuild from the bottom. The other part that Stephen mentioned is you got 6 offensive linemen in the portal, 3 receivers as well. 5 of those guys have starting experience. So it's not just about the quarterback. It's about protecting the quarterback. And it's also about giving him the pieces to be successful. So if this marriage does happen, it's not all going to be on Aiden Chiles' shoulders. They got a lot more work to do in the portal, especially in high school as well, on the offense and defensive line at the point of attack in East Lansing. But you talk about a foundational piece, and you know, whether it's, I think everybody has the North Star of conference championship success, but Aiden Chiles might only be there for 2 or 3 more years if he does in fact transfer to Michigan State. This is going to be a guy that at least gives you a little bit of a head start, right? Gives you some hope in building the program, and it gives a foundational piece for Jonathan Smith to build around and say, listen, we have somebody that we feel really strongly about, really confident about in building around, and it makes those conversations with those potential offensive linemen, receivers, a little bit easier, right? So having the wind at your back, that's kind of what Aiden Chiles provides.
It doesn't just make those conversations easier. It also shows recruits that Aiden Chiles, who was a backup at Oregon State, felt compelled enough to follow Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. So it says a lot about how he feels about his coach and the belief system that he has in him. Michigan State job is under a little bit of turmoil right now. Mel Tucker left in disgrace. NIL money stopped getting paid to kids, and several kids entered the transfer portal. So they need some stability. They brought in a head coach who's proven in another program he can bring stability, but there's nothing that stabilizes you like knowing who your quarterback is going to be for the foreseeable future. So this is a must-get for him, and it looks like it's trending that way, but this is something they got to close all the way down to the wire.
Yeah, I love what you guys mentioned about once you get that quarterback, then you can start selling. Here's who you're going to be blocking for. Here's who you're going to be catching passes from. So that is certainly an important piece there.